We're going to be discussing UFOs, aliens, UAPs,
and Steve, also
this
hypnosis. Understand that you were put under hypnosis.
yes,
I mean, we don't have to talk about that yet, but I mean, it's a great thing. And one thing I'm sure a lot of people want to know, is it real? Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Yam Bar Podcast. Today's guest, the Bard of Ely, also known as Steve Andrews. Steve, thank you so much for joining the podcast. As a matter of fact, I should have talked to you about that. You still going by the Bard of Ely?
yes, Bard of Ely. I'm known as the Bard of Ely, although I'm not in Ely. Ely being, a part of a housing estate in Cardiff in Wales. I'm in Portugal now, and I haven't become the Bard of anywhere over here as yet, but I am a Bard anyway. So I mean, it's a bit complicated, but my life is complicated. And the subject we're going to be talking about today is probably one of the most complicated of all, because we're going to be discussing UFOs, aliens, UAPs,
and Steve, also hypnosis. Understand that you were put under hypnosis.
Yes.
I mean, we don't have to talk about that yet, but I mean, it's a great thing. And one thing I'm sure a lot of people want to know, is it real? I'm sure there's skeptics about hypnosis, and we'd like to know what your experience was. I mean, but not right now. So
yeah, Brian, that's fine. Yeah, please ask me about that, because I have got a lot to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get to it when you ask me about that. So basically the whole subject is massive, really complicated. And what I want to talk about really is my own experience, what I've been through, what I know. And I thought it would be a particularly good time to be talking about this, because there's been all this news about, the sightings over New York and New Jersey, and are they drones? Are they UFOs? Are they UAPs? Are they secret military? Are they enemy devices and drones from enemy nations? Are they coming from under the sea? All this stuff has been being talked about for weeks. But this is something I've been saying. I've been saying that, as far as I'm concerned, from what I've seen of the footage and the photos and the reports, it's nothing new. I've been posting on X, on Elon's site, that I would think of this as a UFO wave or UFO flap. These are terms that used to be in use. And what they really meant was that for a space of time, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe more, like a whole load of sightings were happening in a location. And I started thinking about the town of Warminster in the UK. It's in Wiltshire. And Warminster was the site of a UFO flap and a UFO wave for years, because there were so many sightings going on there. And sightings are often like what we're seeing in the reports of what's happening over New York. Maybe a formation of lights in the sky, maybe a light flashing green and red, maybe the thing disappearing very quickly, maybe it making maneuvers that conventional aircraft cannot make, maybe it was appearing and disappearing. All this stuff, all of that was happening over Warminster. But with Warminster, there was even more than that there were like landed craft being sighted. There were contact between alien beings and humans. And all this was going on, and it became like a focus for UFOs, ufology in the UK. It went on for years. And I was involved in that. But what I'm really trying to say is that this is nothing new. It's like it's all these people kind of freaking out in fear about, what's going to happen? Are we going to be attacked by military? Are these aliens going to invade New York? All this kind of thing. And I personally would say, I don't think so. I don't think it's likely. I think that whatever they are, and I think that there is a mixture. I'm not saying all this is right. I'm saying there probably are actual drones and secret devices. Sure, these things exist, but I think there are also real, shall we say, UFOs, crafts being piloted by beings. And I'll say beings because we don't know where they're from. There are people who claim that they are beings from, and then they will list a planet or a system. They'll say, oh, they're Pleiadians, or that they are Greys, or they will specify what type of aliens. They are Nordics. And there are all these different types of aliens talked about, and places that they come from, like the Pleiades. And then there are others that say, no, that they're extra dimensionals. They're not from another planet or another galaxy. They're actually from another dimension. Mm-hmm. And maybe, and then there are others that say, they've been here all along. They're not even from another planet. They're from the Earth like we are, but they live on a different frequency, a different dimensional scale. And then there's yet more who say they're based under the sea. And others that say they're based under the earth, you know. But these are people who are saying that they are actually from here, the same as we are. But
I also heard that they were in the sun.
And in the sun. Yeah. Okay, I can come to that. And I found, let me just hold one of these up.
Yeah, like, I mean, with their technology, that wouldn't be hard for them, I imagine.
I used to write for this magazine, which I'm going to be talking about, Magic Saucer.
Is that Magic Saucer?
Magic Saucer, yeah. And in one of the, I've been looking through like what I wrote and what was about me in the Magic Saucer issues I've still got. And in one of them, I found that I'd written an article trying to explain how I saw it, about how planets might be, and how we as humans are on a material level, a material plane, shall we say? And we can see all these things, like I can see this table here, and you can see my hat, and I've got a guitar over there, and all these things appear to be physical. But if we ask a scientist, they'll tell you, no, they're not physical. They're actually like billions and billions of atoms. And so somehow or other, we humans believe stuff is solid, but it isn't. So that's known to science, right? But then if we go further than that and we think, okay, there are actually other dimensions. And like, if you think about Wi-Fi and radio waves and TV, all this stuff, we cannot see that, but it's still here. Yeah. It's quite possible that there are dimensions where there are actually things living in. And we say like the things living could be what we call ghosts. Mm-hmm. Or we could call them extra dimensional, other dimensional beings. And so we have that. And so what I'm trying to say is that there may be planets whereby the physical does not contain physical living beings like us. So we don't find any humans there. You don't find any animals. You don't find any plants. But if you go to a higher dimension, you do. You find the spiritual, maybe that's the word, the spiritual beings, the spirit beings, which live on the higher dimension. Mm-hmm. And then I went one further again to, the word is ether, to the etheric dimension. And the beings there in the highest dimension are called the highest vibration, if you want to use that term. In the etheric dimension, the beings are connected with all the rest of space, because space is only a reality from how we are considering it, from down here. And we're considering stuff in material terms, and we're considering stuff as solid objects. But if we take that away, nothing is solid. And we have this idea, which I'm sure you've heard, it's about that everything is one. We are in this oneness, this one universe with one creator. And the one creator you can call God, you can call Allah, you can call a God by whatever name you want, but it is one creator that has made all of this amazing, incredible universe we're in. And that is again one. So we'll say we're in a one universe. There may be others, but we are in one. And the one we're in, we are perceiving it in ways which are wrong, because we're perceiving everything as solid when it isn't. That's
right. All we have is the human perspective to perceive from. And a lot of times it's not very accurate because let's say our eyes are easily fooled, our brain is easily fooled, our perception is easily misled and fooled. So yeah, we could be missing a lot of what's really going on out here. Hey, tell me something, Steve. When did you seem like you gave a lot of thought to this? When did you first start getting interested in UFOs and dimensions and so forth?
Thank you for asking me that, Brian, because I wanted to talk about this. It's important. What happened with me is I had a very strange, mysterious phenomenon which used to occur from when I was in my my late childhood as a boy through my teens, and I never found out what it was. And I'll try and explain about this. I used to be woken up maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning by a very loud humming noise. And I mean loud. It was like this sound going on. And I was awoken, but I thought, what is this? Where is this noise coming from? So I used to get out of bed and I used to try and find out where the noise was coming from. So I would part my curtains and look out the street. It wasn't coming from out there. I'd walk out onto the landing. Was it? No, it's not coming from here. Is it in the bathroom? I go downstairs. Is it? No, it isn't there. And it was still, I could hear it really loud. And I said, well, where is the noise from? And eventually in frustration, because I was frustrated, especially when I was a boy, I was quite, maybe I wouldn't say I was scared, but I was, what is going on? And I would eventually wake my parents up. They would be annoyed, they don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night, right, going on about a humming noise. And I'd say, Mom, Dad, what is this noise? Where is it from? What's going on? And they couldn't hear anything. And my mother would say, Steve, you're just having bad dreams, nightmares. Just go back to bed. There isn't any humming noise. And sometimes I could still be hearing it. So for me, it was really frustrating. I can hear this. My mum and dad couldn't hear it. Sometimes my sister would be woken up as well. My sister couldn't hear it. And it was maddening for me.
It would make you think that you're experiencing what do you call auditory hallucinations or something. Some would think that.
Well, maybe, but let me come to something else, because
yeah, please go.
There's a condition called sleep paralysis,
mm-hmm.
and it has been suggested that this is what I was suffering. But I'm saying no, because I wasn't paralyzed. I was walking about and talking, But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that this was like a very a mysterious phenomena that used to wake me up and give me this, well, what's going on? And I could never find out. But what happened, where this ended, and this is important, I was left for years thinking, well, my family, they can't hear it. I don't know what this is. And then at the age of 19, I'll admit it, I was in my hippie days then, and I was hitchhiking about and I was taking various substances and all the rest of this, the hippie world. Anyway, I'd hitched to London with a friend of mine called Steve, and we were staying in a squat. And I don't know, I don't know if you know what a squat is, but I'll just explain. Basically,
I can imagine. Yeah.
Like a derelict building and an old house or something that isn't being used, and people move into it. So we're staying in this squat in Camden Town. And one night I'd come back with Steve and we had sleeping bags and we went to sleep on the floor, and there were other people sleeping on the floor there. But what happened was that Steve woke up exactly the same time as me. I'd woken up because of the loud humming noise, right? And so Steve said to me, Steve, because another Steve said, Steve, what is that? I said, yeah, I can hear it. I said, Steve, I don't know what it is, but I've been hearing it again, time and time again throughout my life since I was a boy. I don't know what it is. And then the sound faded out, which is what it used to do anyway. But what happened with me was I thought, at last, I'm not crazy. Somebody else can hear the humming noise that I've been trying to explain for all these years. It's real. Right. And what happened then was I went back to sleep. Steve went back to sleep. In the morning when I woke up, I felt really good about this, that someone had heard that noise. Mm-hmm. And you know what? After that, I never heard the humming noise again.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So it was almost like that I had to, justify to myself that I was not crazy. I was not hallucinating this. Somebody else, other people could hear it. And Steve heard it. So then that was all okay. But having said that, I'm still left with a mystery about where was it coming from? What was the humming noise?
Do you think there's any connection to the sounds that's been heard around the world as of late? I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Coming to that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what happened was I was in college in 1973, I think it was. Anyway, there was a guy there was in the spiritualist church. You know, he was part of all that. And I was talking to him, and this was amazing. This was, wow. He just said to me, he said, had you been chanting any mantras before this happened the last time? And I clicked to it immediately. I thought, yes, I had, and Steve had. Now, this is important. Steve and me had been chanting a Buddhist mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, that day. Anyway, the spiritualist guy then went on to say, okay, what he thought this was is that we had tuned into what he was calling the prana, the music of the spheres, okay? And I thought, yeah, that kind of made a lot of sense to me, because there were other people, okay, on the same floor, you know, they were still asleep. They weren't woken by the humming sound. Only me and Steve were. We were maybe the only two who'd been chanting a mantra that day. So that kind of hit home. I thought, all right, maybe this guy's right. But I still didn't know for sure. So moving on in years of time, and also by this time, by 1973, I'd had UFO sightings. So I started to take an active interest in this. And I started to know of other people who were involved in ufology, in the study of UFOs, UAPs as they call them now. And one of them was a lady called Jenny Randalls. And by the way, Jenny is a kind of interest today because of, you know, she is a trans person. And there's all this talk today about trans people. Well, you know, she was one before there was all this talk about trans people. But anyway, like, I knew Jenny, and she wrote loads of books, which you can find easily about UFOs. And I asked her, and I've got it here somewhere. Here we are. I've got an actual letter from her, which I'll hold up.
I see.
And in the letter, Jenny says, it was fascinating to hear about your catalogue of experiences and the way in which you've interpreted or evaluated them. The humming noise is akin to the Hummadruz, a phenomenon not known since Victorian times, and which, in a way, seems to be like a psychic training exercise. The interrelationship between all of these phenomena is what really interests me. I am sure it is the key to what is happening. So that was what Jenny Randalls had to say about it.
It seemed like sounds and frequencies are very important. You know, like you talking about the Buddhist, what do they call them, mantras or something?
Mantras, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other one, no, Tesla, he mentioned if you wanted to understand everything, frequency, vibrations. It seems like sounds, frequencies are very important. Spells, when people cast spells, are words, you know, chants, incantations, prayers. And it seems like words, sounds are very important. And tell me something, Steve, how did you wind up meeting a hypnotist?
Oh God, well, that was many years after this. But if you don't mind, but I'd just like to.
Oh no, we jump in before I go. Yeah, go on at your own pace.
Yeah, can I just read? I just wanted, like, look, I put a card in so I could find the right page.
Okay.
There was somebody else who I got to know. I used to correspond with this person, and this person really interesting. Their name was V. Van Dam, and they were the author of 3 books. And the first of these books is called The Psychic Explorer. Anyway, V, again, you could say V was a trans person because V claim to be neither male nor female. I'm actually able to go from one sex to the other in the same day, which today is called gender fluid.
Yeah, fluid, yeah.
He said that she was no longer fully human. And V also said there's been all this talk about pronouns, okay, about people who identify as non-binary and they, them, and all this. V told me that I'll use the pronoun. No, I can't because it's Shahi. It's S stroke he. Shahi was working with Robert Anton Wilson and Timothy Leary, and all of them had been trying to put together an androgynous language. Okay, and V also told me that V used to channel from galactic spirits. V said that one of the channelings was that there was going to be an androgynous race on this planet Earth within 600 years of your time. And I was receiving, letters from V back in the 1990s, I think it was. So that's saying like 600 years from then, androgynous people were what were planned for being on this planet. So what I'm trying to say with that and with Jenny is they were like almost like forerunners of what's been going on with all the trans people, which is happening now.
Ahead of their time. Yeah.
If you like. And I don't actually know what happened to V, or if V is still with us, or I know Jenny is, but what I did want to say was I wanted to read you a little bit from this book by C.J. Stone, Chris Stone. He's known me since 1971, and he knows all about me. I mean, like, really a whole lot of stuff about me. So if he's telling my story, it's the truth. And he's talking in here about how I was trying to find out about what this humming noise was about, and how anybody who knew about psychic stuff and mystical stuff, I would ask them. But this, like, with relation to ufology and UFOs, there were two people here. The one I think I mentioned earlier was Jenny Randall's, but one, V, okay, V was, you would say, probably a trans person, because V used to say he and she was changing from one gender to another. And I just thought it was weird that there were two people who were giving me advice about this, were basically trans people. But anyway, I'll tell you what V had to say, and I'll quote what Chris has said. V, a self-confessed male-female alien being from Andromeda, who writes books on psychic transformation and who Steve writes to regularly, says, experiencing humming sounds, of which there are various kinds, is not unusual. Often enough, they represent pre-initiation adjustments being made to certain parts of our etheric sheath and or to actual chakric points, unfolding petals, which are a bit blocked or sluggish, etc. So that was a direct quote from what V. Van Dam, the author of Psychic Explorer and Starcraft and another book, had to say. And then Jenny Randall's, Chris has said, Jenny Randall's, a famous UFO expert, says it is something called Hummadruz, a psychic training exercise. And then he followed with a little joke saying, I prefer to think it was Steve's alien friends trying to contact him, in which case they gave up in 1973 in that squat in Camden, and they have never tried again since.
Wow.
And the reason that he's saying that they never tried again since is what happened was when I was in that squat, I woke up at exactly the same time as my friend Steve woke up, and there were other people sleeping, so they didn't hear this, but Steve said to me, what on earth is that noise? And I said, I don't know, but I've been hearing it for years, And it was like a moment in time which was life-changing in a way for me, because I never heard it again after that. And it was like the confirmation of knowing that somebody else could hear this sound, it wasn't just in my mind, was important. And now you could argue that possibly what was going on there was some kind of telepathy. But then this is weird in itself, right? That like I am hearing this sound and I'm transmitting this mentally to my friend who was sleeping, enough to wake him up. Okay. But then, you know, you still got questions, well, what's all that about? But what I wanted to say as well was that it really struck me when I was in college and I met this spiritualist guy, and he asked me if I'd been chanting any mantras. And I thought, yeah, Steve and me had been chanting the Buddhist mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. And I thought, yeah, we had really done that. And so he was suggesting, I can't remember what this guy's name was, just somebody I met in college. And he said he thought that, you know, that I'd connected with what he called the prana, the music of the spheres, the sound of everything. And I thought, that's great. But it still didn't really answer, you know, what was going on. Because as I say, I heard what V's explanation and Jenny's explanation, and I've heard others over the years. So that left me with this mystery, but it also got me involved in looking into, I'll call it the mysteries of life, like what's going on with all this stuff. And I'd had UFO sightings myself by then. So I was just drawn into the whole world of this. And I wanted to talk more about Magic Saucer magazine. So I've got several copies of Magic Saucer magazine here. This one has got an illustration of a little ET, a little green man, you know, and basically this is interesting because in this magazine, this was a regular feature. There was a lady called Lynn Halsall and Tony Halsall, who was her husband, and she used to channel like an extraterrestrial. It was called Queller. And so she used to write always about what Queller had to say, you know, and his advice to the readers on how things worked and all this. So I was familiar with the image and the idea of Queller, the extraterrestrial being, a little green man. And I thought, okay, because the readers of this magazine have heard stuff about meditation, about the power of the mind, about transmitting thoughts, telepathy, and all this stuff. And by then also, I was being called the eco-space editor, because I had the idea that, you know, we should be conscious of the ecology of everything. And maybe this is, you know, throughout the universe in a way. And so I had my eco-space page, and I put on it that I had the idea, and I'll show you the page if I can. There you are. You can see I had the idea that if everybody reading this could try sending a mental image to Queller of a four-leaf clover, which is a, you know, a symbol that people are all familiar with, and it was green. And I thought, well, okay, I'll put that in print so people know and see what happens. Now, what actually happened for quite a while was nothing happened. Nobody got back in touch with the magazine to say, yes, we've been doing that, or yes. But what happened, I think maybe it was a month or so later, something happened in my garden, which was really weird. Now, in my garden, I was growing hops up a drain pipe. It's a climbing vine that you make beer from, right? And I noticed that some of the hops were normal size, some of them were much bigger, and they had leaves coming out of them, which is absolutely abnormal, and I can show you. Right? You can see there, in one hand, I've got a normal hop, and in the other, I've got a really strange hop with leaves coming out of it.
Big difference. And
so what happened then was there was a thing in the local South Wales Echo newspaper, gardening question time, I think it was called. And it said, if you've got any questions you'd like to ask the experts about, get in touch. So I sent in, you know, a picture of that strange hop and what was going on. And I said, can somebody please explain this? What happened then was that the South Wales Echo passed my question on to an expert in botany from the South Wales Museum in Cardiff Civic Centre. And I had a personal letter from him. I think his name was Gwyn Ellis. And he said this was an example of teratology, which means basically monstrous, deformed, you know, whatever it was. And I thought, well, okay, that answers. So I'd learned a word, teratology. I've got teratological hops growing here. And he said, you know, could I give him a specimen that they could keep in the museum's records and collection? I said, yes, of course. And he told me, and other people told me, that sometimes this is caused by the use of pesticides in a garden. And I said, well, my garden is probably the only one in the street where we're not using pesticides. So how come I've got the teratology in my helps? But that was the first strange thing which happened.
And Steve, before you pass on, go to the next topic. The change, was it beneficial? Did you ever find that out? Was it a positive change or a negative change besides appearance?
I would say neither. I would say, I'll tell you what I would say. I think we've all heard about the theory of evolution and how things change over time and that they're adaptations. And life as such makes changes in a genetic material to, you know, see if something is going to be better in the certain conditions that it's in. And this is how life evolves. Okay, I'm sure you've heard that kind of idea.
Right.
So this could have been an evolution of the hop plant, but the next plant, and this was where it got really weird. I'd suggested sending a 4-leaf clover as the image to Quella.
Right.
In the garden, very strange clover started to appear, and the clover had like extra flowers coming out of it and little leaves coming out of the flowers. And I put all this, you know, what had happened in Magic Saucer magazine, so I can actually show you.
Wow.
There's an ordinary clover and Steve Andrews's magic clover, strange one. And you can see some more, there's more strange ones below. So the clover was going abnormal. And so again, I got in touch with the guy in the museum and I said, is this more teratology? And he said, yes, this is. So I'm thinking this is getting, you know, severely odd now because I've got 2 examples of teratologically deformed plants growing in my garden. But it didn't even end there. There was a wild flower, it's very pretty, it's called soapwort, which grows in the UK. And I'd happened to get some of that to put it in my garden because I liked it. It's pretty, it's got pink flowers. And the soapwort went very weird. The petal, where the flower should be with maybe like the 5 petals, and there was like a whole mass of petals. And the flowers didn't open properly. And I thought, well, is this more of this teratology? And again, I asked the expert in the museum and he said, yes, this is yet another example of teratology. So I'd had 3 different plants and completely unrelated plants, all showing the teratological, you know, changes to how they should be. And all that came about after I had this idea of sending a 4-leaf clover to Quella, the extraterrestrial little man. And so I wanted to tell you all about that. And part of why I'm also talking about this is I think that we can interact with beings from, you know, from other planes of existence, other planets, or wherever they're from.
Right. And Steve, before we move on, was the cause, like, anybody check out the groundwater? I know you thought about pesticides, but anybody check out the groundwater? Was there a cause, an explanation from, you know, no, nothing?
No.
Wow.
And
Okay, so it's still a mystery.
Yeah, I can also tell, I wanted to tell you this, Brian, that like my garden was a kind of ecological haven for wildlife. In this garden, I had newts, frogs, slowworms, there's a legless lizard, various caterpillars, moth caterpillars, butterfly caterpillars, hedgehogs, all kinds of different fungi growing there. A nettle patch with the caterpillars on. So it was like, if you had a look at this, you thought, well, this is great. It's really in balance with nature. You've got all these things living here. But it nevertheless had 3 plants which were not as they should be.
Incredible. And I'm trying to be funny a little bit, but you're nowhere near Chernobyl, right?
No, nowhere near Chernobyl.
Wow.
In Cardiff, in South Wales, but it was all strange anyway, because the 3 houses in a row had people who were people who believed in UFOs and had seen them. So that was strange in itself. So if you got, it's a street with terraced houses, one bang next to the other. And we had my house, where I was a UFO sighter believer. we had two people, Andrew and Doug, in the next house, and Mark and Catherine in the next house, and they'd all had experiences of UFOs. So that in itself was odd. So, I mean, when I say I've had a very strange life, I have. And I've always been trying to puzzle out, well, what does all this mean? You know, why are these things happening? So that's a little bit that I wanted to talk about. And I think
I appreciate it. Very interesting. The four-leaf clover, did you have a lot of four-leaf clovers, or was it just one or two or a few?
no, I didn't actually have any four-leaf clover. That
Oh,
was
no.
what
I'm
I
sorry, I
had.
misunderstood.
I only had these, where the clover flower should be, and it should have been, it was a white clover. It should have been a white clover head, as they normally are. It wasn't a white clover head as they normally are. It had little green leaves coming out of it, and it just wasn't right. But
Understood.
the leaves as such stayed the same.
All right.
So
that would have been a great side hustle for you if you could sell four-leaf clovers.
yeah.
That'd have been great.
So anyway, so that was that. I wanted to tell you about Magic Saucer. And
it's amazing how you have these adventures right at home. It's cool.
Yeah, and like also, I can't remember. Did I show you this book by Arthur Shuttlewood?
Ah, yes.
Yeah, because
yeah, tell us about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, because this was important because you know, he was living in Warminster, and there was all this UFO flap going on over Warminster, and that is where I had probably my biggest UFO experience, encounter, or whatever it was. And the reason I'm telling you about this is because Arthur Shuttlewood, when I met him in the morning after I'd had this UFO encounter, I told him all about it. Now, he wasn't surprised because he'd been having these encounters himself, and people from the town had been having these encounters and telling him about what they'd seen and all of this. So it wasn't like, what? This can't be real. He was, oh, okay, yeah. And so as a newspaper man, he made notes about what I told him. So he had the details of what I said to him. And in one of the magic saucers, if I can find the right one.
And so being a bard, I was curious, do you have music associated with this?
I do indeed, and I would like to finish this interview. Oh, here we are. I found this is what Arthur Shuttlewood had to say, and you can actually see this as Warminster News. You see that? There we are, Warminster News, and Arthur Shuttlewood. He wrote this. He said, on September the 3rd, 1980, Stephen Andrews went to Warminster for a few days, and while on Cradle Hill, he spoke to a soldier who believed in UFOs and who had seen one a week before, after only having been living there for a month. The soldier told Stephen that the local policeman had seen a UFO like traffic lights in the sky, going over the barracks area on the same morning as Stephen arrived in Warminster. So this is, if you like, confirming that the night that I saw what I saw, somebody else had seen something. Anyway, carrying on. Later, there's a bit, so this is like, he was talking about something else, but then he says, later, about a mile from Warminster and near Upton Scudamore, he saw two saucers, golden, going orange and fiery red, about half the size of the full moon and oval. They were going west. It was about 2:30 a.m. on September the 3rd. One object disappeared suddenly and reappeared above. It came closer and looked like a ball of fire, golden, with a scarlet band rotating around the middle. Both objects suddenly disappeared. So that is what Arthur Shuttlewood wrote in his column in Magic Saucer about my experience. So
reminiscent of Ezekiel's wheel, just a little bit.
and there's the issue that was in.
Oh, wow.
And then, if that wasn't enough, I ended up, and this particular experience I'd had ended up in this book, which is, well, as you can see, it's a very thick, it's a big book.
Wow.
Paul
Yeah.
Wiltshire here by John Hanson and Dawn Holloway. And I really recommend, like, people check out John Hanson because he's got a fantastic number of files. He's done fantastic amount of research on UFOs. And, you know, he's got books out. And if you wanted to say, like, who could tell you about UFOs in the UK, I'd say John Hanson could. So
Right.
that's
We'll
his
leave a
book.
link in the description for him.
You know, he gave, like, there's a whole page there about me and about what I've just told you, and also about how I used to write for Magic Saucer. So I wanted to get that in. But I believe, like, you were going to ask me something.
Well, yeah, all of this is fascinating. One thing in particular that I was curious about, and I'm sure a lot of other people are, was about hypnotism. And I was wondering if you can speak on it now, because I heard that or read that a sort of video actually on YouTube. We're going to share a link in the description about that too. You were placed under hypnosis. And could you speak to that?
Yeah, sure, Brian. Yeah. What happened with that was the guy that hypnotized me, Dave Coggins, he came to my house the night before the actual session at the television studios, and he wanted to check whether I was someone that can be hypnotized. And he said that I was. He did a test on me, and he said, all right, we talked about something or other, and he said, okay, see me the next day at the studios, which is where it was all recorded. And he put me under, or put me in trance in the TV studios. And then he took it from there. But like, what viewers of the video and what viewers of the TV program didn't know is that that was only a small sample of an hour-long session in which I was hypnotized, and he's, you know, asking me things and whatever was going on. But you know, people wonder, like, is this real? Like, is the information that comes out real or not? And I would say that, having been through that experience, that I think some of it was real, some of it was very real, but some of it was not real. Some of it, I think, like, in my mind, I was coming up with answers, you know, to fulfill, like, he's asking me something, or he's saying, can you go, you know, to a specific time or something? And then I'm saying, oh, yes, I'm there, or I'm telling him. But I think that's more of me, like, storytelling and trying to answer his prompt rather than something that really happened. But having said that, okay, where I'm saying that this is real is that at one point he asked me to go to age 8. That was all. He said, Stephen, can you just go now to when you were aged 8? And then he said, you know, who are you with? What are you doing? And I said, I'm with some children I was in school with. He said, can you tell me the names? I said, yes. And I came out with the names of children I hadn't thought about, you know, for a very, very long time since I was in school, right? And it was like these names of children, I could see the children, had been locked away in my brain, in my wherever all this stuff, my subconscious or whatever. And I had no reason at all to think about those children until the hypnotist sent me to age 8 and said, who are you with? So that bit, I think, was completely real. But there were other bits that I don't know. I think maybe I was making.
Yeah, probably things like the power of suggestion, perhaps. Or
yeah,
like
sure, yeah.
I think another way when we spoke about it before, I think you likened it to leading a witness or something, perhaps.
Yes, that's right, Brian. And the thing is, even with the encounter, you've heard what Arthur Shuttlewood said about it, of what I'd experienced. What happened in the hypnotic session was that there was more stuff happening. But I think that the more stuff happening was not necessarily real, but it was because he was suggesting something to me, and then I would fill in with whatever I filled in with. So, like, at one point, I said, I feel like I'm going up. And then he said, you're going up? So I said, yes, I'm going up. So I felt that some of that was not necessarily real. But it's like I said, if you watch that video, and
Mhm.
this went out, on the TV program, I say early on in that I think I said nagging doubts that I didn't know whether this had really happened or what had really happened. And also I've heard, you've probably heard this as well, is that some UFO abductees have their memories tampered with so that, they can't remember exactly what happened or they can't remember at all. But
Right.
then it comes back. So I didn't know, and I can still say to this day, I don't know. But what I do know is that I did have an experience outside Warminster. I do know that I met Arthur Shuttlewood that morning. I do know that I told him all about it. And I do know that he wrote what I told him in Magic Saucer magazine.
Understood.
So,
Steve, if you don't mind, you describe the process a little bit. I was curious if hypnotism involved, stereotypical stuff like the metronome swinging or the pocket watch and you're getting sleepy. You see on television and movies. Was there anything like that?
now this is I'm just talking about memories tampered with. And I can't remember exactly how he put me under. I've got some idea that he touched my head, but I can't be positive about that. So I don't know.
Yeah. And another thing, I think we shouldn't be too hard on the subconscious because it seems like out here is in its realm. So when we try to get it, to communicate, through that, I don't know how you say it, that depth or distance, I don't know if it translates well because, like I said, this isn't his wheelhouse out here. This consciousness thing out here. So when you try to communicate with it, it's probably, I'd say probably not very conducive to talking to us out here. That's what I'm thinking. Subconscious, like I said, it's not his thing out here, so it's probably not very good at communicating with us.
Yeah, sure. And I just thought of something that I wanted to say as well was that video you've seen, which was from Weird Wales on HTV, it went out as a trailer over an entire weekend. So, and somebody called at my house to say, Steve, I've just seen you on the TV. I said, what are you on about? And it said, oh, you're in the trailer about Weird Wales. So he said, put the TV on. So I put the TV on, and in about half an hour later, sure, it came on. And so a lot of people in Cardiff were seeing, and in Wales basically, were seeing me on the TV in this trailer for that particular incident. And after that, the kids that lived in Ely were kind of bugging me if I'm walking down the street and maybe someone would shout out, hey, Steve, have you seen any more aliens recently? Steve, I saw a spaceship last night. So like they wouldn't kind of let that drop after that because I became known as the guy who'd been on the TV, in this UFO incident.
Right.
So,
it didn't get bad for you. I mean, everything was done in, I guess, a loving manner, or where they really mess with you.
how do you mean? Like,
Yeah, when they mention, have you seen aliens, or something like that? Or
oh
they,
yeah, no, it was friendly because they
okay.
the kids in Ely used to really like me because I had like really interesting friends.
Right.
One of my friends who went down really well in Ely was King Arthur Pendragon, as a druid leader. And like if Arthur visited me, we get knocks on the door every now and again. Steve, can you get Arthur? Steve, can you tell Arthur my mum saw him on TV and all this kind of stuff going on? So,
Hey Steve, sorry, we're down to about 8 minutes now, and I wanted to ask you, in light of all these UFOs and things in the news, what do you think about Elon Musk trying to get to Mars?
I'll tell you what, I think it's a great idea. I back Elon, and I think, which brings me to another book. There was a book out in the 1970s, I think, called Alternative 3 by Leslie Watkins. It's a very controversial book. They go as far as saying it was the book that they tried to ban and all this. It's a sci-fi book, but it's basically saying that there were scientists who got together. They were looking at the state of the planet. There was a lot of worry about, where we were heading. And so they came up with things which could be done. The one was Alternative 1, which was you start to depopulate the people. You bring the population down.
Right.
Alternative 2 was you build underground bunkers to put the elite, if you like, and save people, put them down in there.
I think
And
they started on those.
Alternative 3 was you colonize the moon and Mars. And so I've always wondered, did Elon actually read Alternative 3? Did that give him the idea? But basically, what I'm saying is I can see that his idea is sound, because if this planet is hit by a meteor, which is something he's talked about, or if we're wiped out by climate change, or anything like that, it means that he's got some people safe on Mars. And I also say about Elon, I think that he's making Star Trek, themes in Star Trek, a reality, because he's boldly going and he wants to take, the human race with him. So he's saying that we can have a base on Mars, we can then start building spaceships there, and we can start going out into the universe, and we can become an interplanetary species. I think that's sound. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So,
just as I think we spoke about before, just as strongly as I believe that there's aliens out there, some other life somewhere else, I also believe that there may not be. Because like we were talking about before, life is very precious. It seemed like the impossible happened with life, consciousness. And I'm really not certain that it's everywhere. I really, at times, don't think it's that common. If my suspicions are true and are correct, and we're not everywhere, until we find out that there's life somewhere else, I think we should take great pains to preserve this and to make sure that consciousness continues, not here on Earth, somewhere else.
Totally agreed, Brian. I think, you couldn't put it better than that, really. It's like, I think it doesn't matter whether you believe in a God or whether you don't believe in a God. We're in the same thing, that we've got this amazing world, we've got life here, and so we ought to look after it, because there might not be anywhere else.
Exactly.
That's even more reason to take care of the planet. So I think I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and people talk about we have things to do. We have to find a way to do both. We're carrying all our eggs in one basket by being here on Earth, and we really, really need to get off this planet some kind of way to continue, as Elon put it, consciousness. I was just thinking humanity, and just life in general. But we need to find a way to try to do them all. If we can, take care of this planet and then try to get off the planet simultaneously. Steve, we're down to 5 minutes.
Oh, no. Okay, well, I better play my song then.
All right.
This is the song, okay.
Not hearing your guitar.
Sorry?
Did you strum your guitar? I'm not hearing it.
Yeah, can you hear this?
A little bit. A little harder if you can. No.
No?
No. Barely. I heard one strut. That's strange. I can hear your voice beautifully, but not the guitar.
Sorry?
No, I'm not hearing the guitar. That's interesting.
You can hear it? All right.
Barely. It's going in and out. That's strange.
What shall we do with a flying saucer? What shall we do with a flying saucer? What shall we do with a flying saucer early in the morning? Hooray, and up she rises, hooray, and up she rises, hooray, and up she rises early in the morning. The news said it was planet Venus. The news said it was the planet Venus. The news said it was the planet Venus early in the morning. Hooray, and up she rises, hooray, and up she rises, hooray, and up she rises early in the morning.
Wow. All right, that's very good. We barely can hear. I'm sorry. Yeah, barely can hear the guitar on that one, Steve.
No.
Yeah, the acapella was great. I'm loving
this
it.
This is really weird in itself, because usually, I've got the microphone like right in front of the guitar, and I'm singing here, and you can hear me.
And you know what else? My lady friend yesterday, I told her about the mishap we had yesterday, and she said, "Well, this UFOs."
Yeah, because I was just thinking that, because all this happens, like electronic stuff can cut out, and cars can be stopped or moved in, space and time. All this kind of stuff happens. We're talking about. So maybe the aliens, the ETs,
Maybe it's the aliens.
don't want the guitar to be heard for some reason.
That
But
song is beautiful. Can we find the song online?
You can. There is like a video, and it's actually interesting because the video, I've got like a toy spaceship, and I'm singing the song through this toy spaceship, which used to be known as the mothership. Unfortunately, I've lost the mothership because I was traveling and I don't have the mothership. My fans in South Wales, have asked me, Steve, you still got the mothership? I have to say no. But we could say maybe she dematerialized or she's gone back to where she was from. But I don't know what to do about the song, Brian. It's...
Yeah. We'll get if we get the link to me, I'll put it in the description so people will enjoy it. And Steve, let me sign off, say goodbye to people. We got about a minute left.
Have we only got a minute?
Once again, we come to another end of the Ambar podcast. Like I said, parting is such sweet sorrow. But don't fret. We'll be back hopefully tomorrow, so to speak. Remember to check out our previous Yambar podcast guests. And always remember that the Yambar podcast is a place where you make it happen. Once again, I'm Brian Barcelo here with Steve Andrews, a.k.a. the Bard of Ely. Steve, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brian. This has been absolutely wonderful being here. And yeah.
You're the best, Steve. Come back anytime you want to, man.
Okay.
I appreciate you. Peace, everybody.